you're right-handed? That's a lot of people. Okay, raise your hand if you're left-handed. Raise your hand if you're ambidextrous. Kind of, Sam. Okay. Well, that sounds about right. So did you guys know that 90% of the population is right-handed and 10% of the population is left-handed, leaving a very, very minuscule amount of people ambidextrous? Pretty cool, right? So growing up when I was little, I thought I was ambidextrous. I thought I was super cool and I was so different, and I tell my teachers, yeah, I'm both-handed. It's not even a thing. They would say, that's impossible. It is possible, but eventually I kind of just adapted to being right-handed. So because of my inspiration and remembering my story so vividly about writing, I wanted to delve more into the topic of dexterity. So to understand how we choose our hand, which hand we write with, we first have to understand the history of dexterity. So this is pretty much all about left-handed people, sorry Cam. So in the Middle Ages, left-handed people were considered evil. They thought that women who were left-handed were witches. They thought that men who were left-handed were spawns of Satan, sorry. And then in the 18th and 19th century, they didn't really let up. This physician named Caesar, I believe his name is, he considered left-handed people to show signs of pathological behavior, savagery, and criminality. And really, they didn't really let up on handedness until the 1970s, if you can imagine. That was like 50 years ago, not even. And then in the 70s, we finally see a change in acceptance towards left-handed people and actually being able to choose which hand you write with and being accepted for it. So now that we're not forced to choose which hand we write with, how do we choose? So this all goes into understanding preference versus performance. So hand preference identifies the preferred hand for completing a task, whereas performance differentiates between the abilities of the left and the right hand on a particular task. And this is from the Frontiers of Psychology. So that's really just explaining how kids measure their hand preference through gestures before they learn how to speak. So when you're little, remember like pointing to something that you wanted your mom to get for you, or just screaming and crying before you could form words, and just grabbing things. So when we learn how to write, we remember that in our bodies, and that's how we kind of understand what we prefer. Also to understand is cross-dominance, which is when your motor skills don't correspond with your handedness, also from the Frontiers of Psychology. And that's very common. It doesn't mean you're ambidextrous or anything, but it's just say you're right-handed, but you play all your sports with your left hand. It's saying that even though you prefer to write with your right hand, you do prefer to do things with your left side of your body, technically, as well, and you perform better as well. So now that we understand how we choose which hand we write with, you may ask yourself, whoa, how does this affect my brain? Maybe not, but I did. So we have to understand brain lateralization, which means this is the localization of a function or activity to one side of your brain, in preference to the other. So it's just saying that different tasks are assigned to different sides of your brain. So for right-handed people, your left hemisphere controls your right side of your body. And right-handed people show signs of being more analytical, more logical, using more reasoning when they're making decisions. And then oppositely, left-handed people are right brain dominant. And this is being more creative, more imaginative, and generally being more free-flowing with the way you live your life and make decisions. And then as you can imagine, ambidextrous people are pretty symmetrically both. So, as each hand is competent at performing the same task to the same quality level, this makes the brain symmetrical, as proven by the little differentiation between hemispheres seen in the brain scans of ambidextrous individuals. Now that might sound like a mouthful and not really make sense, but it's just saying that you're pretty symmetrical, which may seem cool that, hey, I can do more things. But really, being ambidextrous does have its downfall, such as people who are ambidextrous show more signs of being ADHD, having more learning disabilities such as dyslexia, and also having slower processing time because your brain's just doing so much, so you can't do everything. And then now that we know more about the brain, you might wonder, how does this influence me? Why does it matter? How can I implement this in my life? So from my findings, I put together this table just showing different career paths, famous people who might inspire you, and some advantages and disadvantages. So left-handed people could be artists, entrepreneurs, designers. Famous people are Leonardo da Vinci, David Bowie, and Bill Gates. So advantages are that you're less likely to get arthritis or ulcers, which I thought was interesting because I feel like left-handed people kind of write sort of wonky and sideways. And also, left-handed people are actually better at sports, believe it or not. So imagine there's 90% of the population is right-handed. You're not going to really anticipate playing against a left-handed person, so they tend to have the upper hand. Some disadvantages are that the world was made for right-handed people. So, I mean, playing guitar, you have to have a special guitar. Scissors, you need special scissors, crazy things like that. And also, like ambidextrous people, left-handed people are more prone to disabilities, such as dyslexia. Also, right-handed people are good athletes, scientists, surgeons, really analytical, detail-oriented tasks. It's famous people like David Beckham, Taylor Swift, Robin Williams. And some advantages are that right-handed people scientifically live 9 years longer. And some disadvantages are that you're not as cool. I mean, when someone says they're left-handed, I get pretty excited. I'm like, whoa, that's so different. And also, like I said about left-handed people, right-handed people don't have the upper hand in sports. Not that you're not good at sports, but. And then as you can tell, like a lot of people, I mean, Taylor Swift, she's an artist, but she's right-handed, you know? So all these can cross over each other, and it doesn't necessarily define you. Just a little disclaimer. Like, it only let it define you as much as you want it to. It doesn't mean that if you're right-handed, you're not creative, or if you're left-handed, you're not good at math. It only gives you some insight into your habits, your talents, and tells you a little bit about yourself. So I hope today you learned more about why you chose which hand you write with, how this affects your brain, and also just a little bit about yourself, maybe. So, the next time things are getting out of hand, take a step back and know that you'll be able to handle this.